there, welcome to the Pandemic Pinup Happy Hour. Today we're going to be doing vermouth-based cocktails. It'll be very simple and sweet. There is one cocktail that has a large amount of ingredients. Some of them may not be things that you readily have at home, but the other ones should be quite easy to make with just whatever you have on your shelf. So the first cocktail I'm going to be making today is something I like to call a Bianco Squeeze. Bianco means white in Italian, and we will be using white vermouth for this cocktail. Today I'm going to be using Cinzano, and this one is their sweet white vermouth. You could absolutely use any other brand that you have, even if it's a dry white vermouth. Dry white vermouth works really, really nice in this cocktail as well. I just happen to have sweet white on hand, so that's what I'm going to be using. The Bianco Squeeze is also going to be our only shaken cocktail today. We haven't done a lot of stirred cocktails in a while, so I figured we would put in a few of those for our class today. But for this one, you will need a cocktail shaker. And I'm going to apologize because my ice today is trash. So I'll be double straining this particular cocktail because this ice breaks up and really leads to small shards. But you're not required to double strain this at home. You can just do it with a regular strainer. So very simple. We're going to start off with 1.5 ounces of our white vermouth. Put it directly into our shaker. And then we're going to use an aged rum. If you've seen any of my classes before, you probably know that one of my favorite aged rums is the 7-year-old Flor de Caña, which is from Nicaragua. I'm not sponsoring or being sponsored by any particular brand. I just really like this rum. You could use any rum of your choice. But I would say something with at least 4 years on it. Anywhere above that will be really nice. You're going to need 1/2 ounce for this cocktail. So the entire class today being vermouth-based cocktails, the larger amount of alcohol in the cocktail or the measure will come from our vermouth, and any other alcohols added would be acting as modifiers today. We're also going to use 1/2 ounce of grapefruit juice, ruby red rather than white. The white grapefruit juice would make this cocktail quite astringent. And we're going to use 1/4 ounce of fresh squeezed lemon juice. Add in there as well. And you'll also need orange bitters. I have the Angostura brand. You can use any other brand you might have. And you're just going to need 1 dash. All right. So we're going to put ice in our shaker. And we're going to shake this for about 10, maybe 15 seconds. All right. So if you're new to shaking cocktails and you're not really sure about how long you should shake it, a good reference is when your shaker tin becomes pretty frosty to where you can trace something through the condensation on the outside. And this is going to be a small little cocktail, kind of like a nightcap, but much more suited for the morning time. Put this in this tiny Nick and Nora glass that I have. Perfect. And then I like to garnish this just with this very thinly shaved lemon slice that I've kind of folded. I'm going to put that right on top. Very, very simple cocktail. Very pretty to look at. My wash line is extremely close to the brim. I'm actually going to sit on it just so I can move it around. Yes, very simple cocktail. It's really nice and fruity, very refreshing. It's really bright. Tastes kind of like a summer morning where it isn't too hot yet. Something around like 70 degrees. I live in Texas. It gets incredibly hot here. But it is a very nice, easy sipping drink. I would drink this over mimosa any day. I find mimosas just a little boring because they're just kind of overdone. But this is a very nice cocktail. So moving on, I thought it would be really fun to do a reverse Manhattan. Many people are familiar with the Manhattan. It is a whiskey-based cocktail. Generally speaking, it uses rye, and that would be your base spirit. But we're literally going to flip the script. And a traditional Manhattan would have your rye whiskey and your sweet vermouth. We're going to be using the same ingredients, but the ratios will be flipped. So you'll be needing a mixing glass for this cocktail. And I'm going to be using, again, I have Cinzano at home. This is a sweet red. I'm going to use 2 ounces of this. Put that directly into my mixing glass. And I am going to still use whiskey. I'm going to use Redemption Rye. You can use any other whiskey you have at home. I know there are some people who have a preference for bourbon. Please feel free to experiment. I'm going to be using 1 ounce of Redemption whiskey. That in there. And I really enjoy combining my bitters. So whereas most Manhattans might have a couple dashes of Angostura bitters, I'm going to do 1 dash of orange bitters and 1 dash of Angostura bitters. If you have different bitters at home, I highly recommend making one cocktail that you like consistently, such as a Manhattan or an old fashioned, and then just make it every time with different bitters so you can see what they're doing to your cocktail. So with that in my mixing glass, I'm going to add some ice. And then we're going to stir, and everybody kind of measures differently. Different bartenders have different methods. You can measure by the amount of revolutions you're doing, or stirs, if you will. You can also count in your head. Usually, if you have a cocktail that is all alcohol based, you would stir, whereas ones with juices are ones that tend to get shaken. But if you are stirring, you want to stir for anywhere from 20 to 30 seconds. Some people do about 35 to 50 revolutions. It just kind of depends on how cold you want your beverage to be and also what dilution point you're trying to achieve. I also like to keep my hands on my glass on occasion or touch it in between my stirring just to kind of gauge the temperature. So this, I'm going to serve it just like it would be a traditional old fashioned, or sorry, traditional Manhattan, not old fashioned. So I have a large cube in a rocks glass. I'm going to use my julep strainer. I'm going to strain this directly over ice. So at first glance, it looks exactly like a Manhattan. I'm going to garnish it the same way as well. I'm going to put some Luxardo cherries on a cocktail pick. And that is a reverse Manhattan. It looks almost identical. You'd never know. But it'll also be lower ABV with this method, so you can drink more. I know a lot of us are quarantined at home, so that's always really nice. It's really nice. And you get a lot of different notes that you don't really expect from the Manhattan. You still get a little bit of that snap from the rye. You definitely get the depth from the bitters. But the vermouth being the main spirit just makes it a lot more subtle. There's more floral notes. You notice a lot more herbaceousness. So it's just a very interesting switch up. So I hope you try this at home. You can also do this with other vermouths if you don't happen to have sweet vermouth at home. But it's very, very nice. I enjoy this cocktail quite a bit. I'm going to keep this one with me. And then our last cocktail today is the one that has like every ingredient in the book. It also has a lot of cocktail ingredients that people tend to purchase for maybe a one-off cocktail, and you're left with a substantial amount of alcohol that you don't really know how to use. The inspiration for this cocktail came from the Showgirl cocktail, which was designed in 2017 at the Savoy Hotel in London to commemorate Marilyn Monroe staying at the hotel in 1956 when she was recording her movie, The Showgirl. So I kind of changed some of the ingredients. The original recipe calls for like a rose liqueur and a homemade Aperol cordial and champagne. I kind of kept the same or a similar flavor profile, tried to modernize it, but also make it taste a little less bougie. And in, I guess, tribute to Marilyn Monroe, but her less bougie days, I named this cocktail the Norma Jeane, which, if you don't know, is Marilyn Monroe's actual name. So this is also a stirred cocktail. And bear with me, write these down. These are a long list of ingredients. So for this cocktail, we're going to be using white vermouth. And again, this is a sweet one. You could use a dry. I've tried it both ways. It's beautiful either way you choose, or with whichever vermouth you choose. So a half ounce of white vermouth. We're going to use a 1/4 ounce of amber vermouth. This one is a different brand. This is Noilly Prat. They're Also a very classic brand. They make a lot of white dry vermouth is what most people recognize them for. But their amber vermouth is something I've been playing around with a lot in quarantine, and I'm just absolutely in love with it. Then we're going to use a half ounce of Aperol, which is one of my favorite Italian liqueurs. It's not quite as bitter as Campari, but it is equally as wonderful when it comes to how bright and strong the flavor profile is. And then we get to those ingredients that I mentioned that sometimes we buy and we don't really know what to do with after we've experimented with one classic cocktail. So I have maraschino liqueur, and as you can tell, my bottle is fairly full. This isn't something that gets a lot of rotation in my home bar. So I was very much trying to find new ways to use it. I'm going to use a 1/4 ounce of that. And we're going to use creme de violette, which most people are familiar with in the aviation cocktail. It's a beautiful purple color. It's made from violette flowers or violet flowers, and it's really, really nice. But it is incredibly intense in flavor, so we are only going to use a bar spoon's worth, which, depending on your bar spoon, is anywhere between an 1/8 to a 1/6 of an ounce. So that is all of our ingredients for now. I'm going to put ice in my mixing glass. And just like the other cocktail, we're going to stir until we reach the desired dilution and desired cold level. So for this one, I like to stir it probably, I don't know, about 20, maybe 25 seconds. And then we're going to add a little ginger beer. Ooh, somebody's popping into the room. Pause real quick and bring Woody on. All right, so we're gonna stir, and then we're gonna add 3 ounces. Hello, Woody. Gonna add 3 ounces of ginger beer. The ginger beer that I'm using is not too spicy or too sweet. It's very middle of the road, but you can definitely use any ginger beer of your preference. And I just like to add it in here so I can give it a quick stir before I strain it into my glass. I'm going to be using a really pretty vintage glass that I have and pebble ice because yet again I have gone to Sonic and I'm addicted to the pebble ice. I got a whole bunch of it for this class. It just makes me very happy. I'm filling my glass to the absolute capacity with pebble ice. And then I'm going to strain the Norma Jeane very slowly over this ice. It's a really pretty, almost rosé color. Now the original Showgirl cocktail is garnished with a bunch of fresh flowers. I don't happen to have a garden, so because I'm using the maraschino liqueur, I'm going to be using a Luxardo maraschino cherry, and that is the Norma Jeane. Very pretty cocktail as well. Oh, that's really tasty. Very refreshing. But I like the fact that the Aperol plays a part and it gives it a nice balance of bitterness because there are a lot of liqueurs which can be sometimes overpoweringly sweet. Something that we call cloy, where it's like you can't drink too many without feeling kind of nauseous. But this is really nice. It's bright. Very, very pretty. You could also make this and then add juices if you wanted it to be a little bit fruitier. I would recommend starting with either grapefruit or lemon. But as is, it's a very, very nice cocktail. But these are our cocktails today. As you can see, very simple, very quick to make, low ABV, can drink them all day. So I'm going to tell you guys just a little bit about what to expect next week. I have been working on a bunch of ideas. If there's anything in particular you would like to learn, please feel free to message me, reach out through any of my social media accounts. I take inspiration wherever I can get it. So next week, instead of making a bunch of cocktails, we're going to make a lot of things you can have at home to use in your home bar. We'll be making homemade vermouth. We'll be making homemade grenadine. I'm going to go through the different processes to make tinctures and how to maybe combine those to make bitters or just to make bitters rather than tinctures. And then I haven't decided what cocktail we'll be making, but it may or may not have anything to do with all of the little sub ingredients we're going to learn how to make. And then I believe the week after that, we'll be doing cocktails that go with cookouts or barbecues because it's hot outside. But in Texas, we're crazy. When it gets hot outside, we like to go outside and light the grill because add more heat to the heat. So to keep things cool, I'll whip up some cocktails for you guys. But I hope you're enjoying your Sunday. Thank you for stopping by. If you have any questions whatsoever, also feel free to reach out to me. I'm always available because this is my life. I'm living my best quarantine as we all try to get through COVID together. So thank you for tuning in. And if you're watching on Facebook, I'm going to go ahead and end the live. And hopefully I'll see you guys next Sunday.